Hi guys, welcome to Fierce and Pretty. Honey here. So I'm starting a new short little mini series about books, specifically books about witchcraft. So there are gonna be at least 3, 4, 5 episodes coming around this topic because it's just impossible to bunch in all of the books in one video. No one would have the time and patience for that. And that's why I have decided to do separate themes for these videos. And just so you know how I'm gonna be kind of classifying or separating these different types of books is because today, now more than ever, we have different ways for people to identify as a witch. Different titles, different ways of seeing, different ways of practicing. So I'm going to be using terms like folk magic to refer on that type of things. Then I'm going to be talking about Wicca when I talk about books that are made for people who identify as solitary Wiccans, for example. And then I'm going to talk about initiatory witchcraft when I'm talking books around Gardnerian or Alexandrian witchcraft. And then there might come things somewhere in between. And I'm also gonna do one episode around audiobooks because that is a whole different ball game when it comes to witchcraft books and how they work. So also on the technical side of, is it worth it to get an audiobook about witchcraft or not? But the first episode today is focusing on books that are, all of them are very non-Wiccan books. So it's going to be a quite broad variance, and some of these are more like overall books and not very specifically on witchcraft. But I'll talk more about them later, like this big boy here. And what I'm not gonna include in the series are books about tarot, astrology, or those specific parts that even those are things that people who identify as witches do, or some of them do. I'm not gonna include those books because then this whole series would be crazy. So I'm just gonna focus on books that have the word witchcraft in them. But I think it's better to turn the camera down and look at the book while I'm talking about them rather than seeing my yapping face the whole time. So the first book that we're going to concentrate on is by an author called Christopher Dell. And the English title of this book is The Occult, Witchcraft and Magic, an Illustrated History. As you can see, I have the Finnish version of it, but it doesn't matter. And this is how the book looks without the paper covers. It is a huge book. But why I say it doesn't matter if it's in Finnish is because I wanted to show you just how beautiful the book is. The context of this book starts from ancient magic, then it goes to ancient Greece and Rome, northern magic, Middle Age, Renaissance, the world of magic, and then going towards the future and the modern time magic. But the main juice about this book is the beautiful illustrations. Then the chapters are quite short. You get the, really basics about what's what. And it doesn't go in depth into anything. For example, in this chapter of Hecate, you just get a short paragraph there and beautiful illustrations, and then it moves on. But overall, I think that this is an interesting, and actually, even though it's a really thick and big book, it is a fast read, and it just gives you great reference points And when you find something interesting, you can go in and research more, because this doesn't give much about any topic, but it gives you a nice overall picture. So I think as a starter book, or people who are interested about the history and evolution about magic, this is really interesting. Even though you're not really feeling very witchy or anything, this might still be a nice book to read. And this book doesn't have a lot about the author. The only part that it has here is in the inside of the cover sheet. And I tried also to research each and every author and see what I could find them on a quick Google search. So what I was able to find that is Christopher Dell has a art history degree, and that truly shows in this book. But what it says in the book cover is that he interested about esoteric and occultic world when he was studying the art history, and especially at the 16th century Roman architecture when he was studying in London. And he has written other books about monsters, mythology, and important pieces of art. Then the second book is kind of similar type of book, The Occult Book, a chronological journey from alchemy to Wicca. And it's written by John Michael Greer. And he is an author and a druid and an occultist who has published a shit ton of books. So if you go and look his bibliography, it's insane. And this is not the first time I'm talking about this book. I used this in one of my tarot history series. But the fun thing is how the book is constructed. That it starts and it goes order in year by year. And from the earliest times to the more modern times. But in the way, it's a really similar type of book than the other one. It just has a bit different topics in it than the Christopher Dell's book. But as you can see on the sides of this book, it jumps from different year to different year. And the same with this book, that the illustrations are beautiful. And the main juice about this book is that it goes through different people and different concepts in the world of occult. But overall, a nice quick read and reference, but doesn't go into very deep into anything. Then let's jump to books that are really focused on plainly witchcraft. These are both Erin Murphy Hiscock's books, The Green Witch and The House Witch. And I basically got these because they were in Finnish, and I enjoy reading Finnish books from time to time. And overall, I think that these are nice kind of beginner books, introductions to witchcraft that comes towards witchcraft from very kind of non-Wiccan way. The Green Witch talks all the time about how being a Green Witch you need to do this and need to do that, very nature-based, herbs, everything like that. And the Home Witch is focusing a lot about magic that you can do around home and hearth, around the hearth concept and things like that. If we quickly look at the content in the Green Witch, it's starting from what is green witchery and how to follow that path, and about natural healing, and also some of kitchen stuff and gardening stuff and things like that. A quick read, a positive, gentle kind of book. But for me, this was just a one-time read. And I think some of the concepts are nice and kind of linked to things that I do with my garden and things like that, and the importance of nature in my practice all over. So even though I wouldn't label myself as a green witch, I think there's a lot of nice things for many type of witches. But if you're not into nature or herbs or anything like that, or you're not a really homey person, this might not be the best book for you. And the House Witch, I think this is kind of really similar to the Green Witch, but focusing more on things around the home. But I think that this gives people who are maybe more in the broom closet and would want to practice so that their family might not really be bothered by your practice. So this kind of gives you a way to do witchcraft in a really kind of mundane way. And what I think were kind of great parts in this book were about things that I think all people who consider them interested in witchcraft would find interesting, around cleaning the home, cleansing, and kind of making the home a sacred place, and kind of overall enhancing the energies at your home. So I think that is the most valuable part for me in this book. But overall, really beautiful books, nice to handle, and pretty ones. And while doing my research on Google about the authors, there wasn't much about Arin that I could find. The main thing was that she's from Canada, so that's what I got out. But I don't know what are her major credentials outside of being an author. Then linking to the Green Witchery, the book called Witch's Garden by Sandra Lawrence. And Sandra, again, she's a writer, and I think mainly on gardening topics, so I don't know if she even identifies as a witch in any way. What this book focuses on is the plants used in witchcraft and in the ancient world. Again, like the Green Witch and the House Witch, a really pretty book. I think the illustrations in this one are absolutely beautiful, and you get like these really antique looking pictures of plants like wormwood or whatever, how they were seen in the old world and in the world of witchcraft. But what it doesn't give anything really practical on growing them or on using them. So this is just kind of talking an overall perspective and kind of how they were seen in folklore and in traditional medicine. But a pretty book, nice book to look, but again, not really practical, at least for me. Then one last book on the Green Witch side is the Grimoire for the Green Witch by Anne Mora, and it's titled A Complete Book of Shadows. And this is actually a first book that kind of really seems like written by a witch, because in this we have the About Anne Mora, a chapter talking about her family heritage as a Green Witch, and this bases more on the grandmother's side of heritage amongst witchcraft, which some people think as valid, some people don't. But what is interesting about Anne Mora is that she had a Brazilian mother and a grandmother of Celtic Iberian descendant, so there is kind of interesting mix in her past, and things like Condom Bleu are mentioned here. And the reason that why I know about that faith, even from the beginning, is the Afro-Brazilian tarot that bases on that same religion that Saturnarium sent me. So interesting mix. And if we look at the content of this book, talks about in the beginning it's an easier read. There is something that you can actually read, but then it goes to really kind of workbook or practice book and reference book. It goes to green witchcraft, circle casting, esbats, sabbats, recitations, rituals, meditations. And then in the Book of Shadows, in the spell sides, there are spellcrafting correspondences, basic spells, teas, oils, baths, and then there's part of divination, and even it talks about tarot in it. But overall, this book isn't so much about reading as it is more used as a reference, because it has lists of correspondences, symbols, planets, oils, everything. So it is not something that you can just sit down and really read. It's rather something that where you find something in it that you need and use it at the time of the need. But I think when it comes to these list of correspondences and many things like symbols, this is the first really practical of these books. And I think that if one would be interested about green witchcraft, one might read Orrin Murphy's book about the Green Witch and then have this as workbook or something. Or I think that even though if you wouldn't identify as a Green Witch, this is kind of a handy research book and reference book. Then I have one kind of really specific book, and it's The Witches Ointment by Thomas Hatzes. And he is an occultist and has a vast knowledge on psychedelics overall. So if you've ever heard about flying ointments and witches ointments, and you're interested about the history of that part and what is the whole deal around that, this might be an interesting read for you. It is a really well-researched book, a really professional quality, and it has a lot of these, but it's also a really historical and somewhat academic, so some people might find it a bit dry read, but I found it really interesting, even though it wasn't as practical as maybe I would have wanted it to be, because I have some my gardening on my own going on around, like for example my mandrakes are growing, but this is really the best book that I could find out about the witches' ointments or flying ointments. Then yet another kind of reference type of book. A book that you can't really read per se, or you could, but it's just a list of herbs. But it's Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. People have really mixed feelings around Scott Cunningham, and I'm going to talk more about him when we go into a different episode and talk more about the Wiccan books. But this book basically just talks about herbs and plants and their correspondences and spells and magical intentions. The images in this book are really simple drawings, but you kind of can see the picture of grain looking like grain and its powers or folk names, elements, deities, what correspondences you might have, and then a short few rows about their magical uses. Some have longer parts on their magical uses, but the whole book is like this. So if you're interested in herbs and using them in your practice, I think this is a really comprehensive book when it comes to the amount of herbs that's in here. Then I have two books by Skye Alexander, and what I could find about her during my research is that she's more of an author, and I couldn't really find kind of like witchy credentials, but she writes a lot about topics around astrology and witchcraft, but I really don't know who and what Skye Alexander is, on top of being an author. But I think these books are really popular today, and the main reason, I guess, is that they are really pretty. The texture in the book covers is amazing. The layouts are beautiful, and even the pages are like really old feeling and old looking. So well done on the publishing side of things. But these are like really basic introductory books. So talking around the topics on what is witchcraft, magic and how it can help you. And then it talks a little about history of witchcraft in the West, different types of witchcraft. Then it has practical things, kind of very short way of creating a sacred space, altars, shrines. And then there is a grimoire at the end. So this is a really typical way of witchcraft books being. So first you have the things that you can read as like in a book, but then you have the grimoire part at the end. So this is not an exception. So half of the book is the grimoire, and it's filled with spells and doing talismans. So I think that for young people who are interested in witchcraft, this could be kind of like a good starting point. Not the most interesting book on my end, but a really pretty one. And then I also do have her Modern Witchcraft spell book, but I think that, again, this one is beautifully made, but I don't know, this kind of feels somewhat kind of repetitive on top of that. So if I would get either one of these, I would maybe rather get this one than this one. But they're both made really in a beautiful way, and I guess that's a good selling point on Amazon. But I can imagine these kind of fitting more to the maybe a younger audience or people starting out. So good starter books. Then the last book in this series is the spell book for new witches, Essential Spells to Change Your Life by Ambrosia Hawthorne. And what it says about her is that Ambrosia Hawthorne is a tarot reader, astrologer, and traveling eclectic witch with roots in Yupik shamanism and Puerto Rican folk magic. So with this book, we at least have some kind of witchy credentials to the author. And this book is basically just filled with spells. So I think one shouldn't really just start with this. One might have to read few, basic witchcraft books before just stepping into this. But this could be a good book to getting ideas for kind of tweaking your own spells when you move further in your practice. And the spells are divided with different uses, like for protection and forgiveness or health and healing. So you can find several underneath one title. But I think that for me, this could mostly work as an kind of inspirational book. And again, not a book that one could really read and learn a lot about in per se, but as references when it comes to spells and getting the hang of how to do spells and what does it mean. So when it comes to this lot of books, I've gotten something out of each and every one of them, but would I highly recommend buying them all? No, definitely not. But it totally depends on what you are more interested about around the topic of witchcraft. This one probably is gonna be one of my favorites of them because it's a really beautiful book, and some of these I'm gonna be using later on, but most of them are just one-time reads for me. But let me know, what are your thoughts around these books? Is one of your favorite amongst them? So that was the first episode on the Witchcraft book series. Let me know if you have any of these books, how you like them, if you have any questions of any of them. And next time we're gonna focus on the audio books, and let's see what's the episode after that gonna be. Until next time, bye guys.